price becomes secondary to building value, because your system is going to teach them how to deliver value in the house. Because you could go out there and lowball everybody else and be busy, but you're never going to make any money.
Welcome to the Sales Made Simple podcast. This podcast is dedicated to helping overwhelmed outdoor living professionals, landscapers, and hardscapers just like you increase your closing rate to over 75% without doubling your workload, so you can build a seven-figure business that doesn't need you. I'm your host, Joshua Gillow. Let's dig in. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Sales Made Simple podcast. This is your host, Joshua Gillow, and Brian Kavalsian is back with us here this week. And if you missed it last week, we really rocked on this subject about attracting your ideal clients. If you don't know who you're talking to or need to talk to, who has the ability to say yes to you and your services, and you're just kind of broadcasting to everybody and going out to every lead, then you're missing a massive opportunity to streamline that and make a ton more money in a lot less time. So we're going to jump in this week. We're going to shift gears and get into the mechanics of profit, mastering P&Ls, job costing, margins for contractors. And our main objective with this episode is to teach you why, or at least introduce you why ignoring your financial statements and understanding having a financial, ability to read financial documents could be costing you tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Those documents, they tell us something. It's like a dashboard to our business. And if we're not looking at the dashboard, we don't know when we're out of gas or when the engine's overheating or how fast we're going. We don't know any of those things. We can't just spray and pray and, be high on hopium all the time that the next project's going to solve all our problems. It doesn't work that way. Also, how to work less and make more. That's everybody's goal, right? And how to master reading those financial statements. This might sound like a yawn, but I tell you, knowing Brian, this is not going to be a yawn. You guys are going to get a lot of gold nuggets. So Brian, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Hopium. I'd never heard that before. Hopium. That's a good one.
Yeah. Thank you. It's what most of us, and again, I'll raise my hand. It's always, when it comes to financial statements, when I first started out almost 30 years ago, it was like financial statements were fun to look at when you were doing well. Right?
Yeah.
You're like, all right, we just closed another project. Yeah, it's looking awesome. So much better than last year. And then all of a sudden it's the next year and things are going slow. And the last thing I want to do is open up that P&L and look at it and be like, oh no, it's negative. Like, it's never going to be better. Oh my goodness, this is over. I can't believe this. This whole idea of owning a business, this imposter syndrome comes out. Like, maybe I didn't know what I was doing and I just got lucky back then. But what I've learned along the way, and that's why I'm excited to have this conversation with you, is once we started to demystify these documents, these financial documents, once I started to understand what story they were telling, they were powerful. Because now they can help direct the ship. I knew what to do with it. If I saw this, I knew to do that. If I saw that, I knew to do the other thing, right? But without that clarity, without the education, without asking those questions and hiding at times when I started out, I wouldn't have that awareness. And I want to share that with the listeners on what they can do. And I know this is like your bread and butter right here. So I can't wait for you to crack into it and let us know why most people ignore their financials.
At the end of the day, it's nobody taught us how to make money in this business. That's ultimately kind of like what it comes down to. And we're out there as entrepreneurs. We talked about this in an earlier episode where we are out there, we're driven. We didn't want to go work for somebody else. We thought that, hey, I'm going to take control of my future and I'm going to go become a business owner. And, along the way, the business, and it has a dangerous tendency of doing this, it will consume your life if you allow it to. And we get so busy as entrepreneurs and we get so focused on the things that we think that matter that we will oftentimes skip over the things that really do matter.
Uh-huh.
It's the difference between, like busy work and accomplishment. I call this like busy work the illusion of accomplishment. Is I did all of these things at the end of the day. I go home and I'm exhausted. I went and I did this and I did that and I did this and I did that. Yeah, but did you accomplish anything? When it comes to the financial statements, I mean, it is the ultimate scorecard. And unfortunately, what a lot of business owners do, because again, It's not your fault. Nobody taught you how to make money in this business. However, it is your fault, back to personal responsibility. If you want to build a great business, boy, you better understand your numbers inside and out, upside down and sideways. You got to understand the numbers, what those numbers are telling you, and what you need to do, the decisions you need to make based on what the numbers are telling you. And so, people have metrics for sales and for marketing and for production, like for sales. Just as an example, what do you teach your people? What are the metrics you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, the first metric is closing rate. If you're seeing 10 clients, how many of those are becoming customers? And then if you have different layers, like, first money might be design and second money might be build. So
Mhm.
how many are going from first money to second money? That's the question, right? So we're tracking those. And if we see that our closing rate on design is really, really high, but our build rate is really low, there's a problem. There's a bottleneck right there. So that's where we have to, but if we have 100% closing rate on design and 90% closing rate on build, we're doing pretty good. But if it's 100% on one and 2% on the other, or 10%, we got to fix the problem. So those are like blinking red lights or green lights, depending on how it is. So that's like the primary ones that I'm targeting on the front side.
So you and a lot of other, I'm not going to say most, but a lot of people have these metrics in place for
Mhm.
sales.
Yep.
So like in our niche, roofing, windows, siding, one day bath, anything kind of quick turn that is not design build. So you got a salesperson, we're issuing that salesperson 2 leads a day, no
Huh.
more, two a day, two. Okay. So up to 10 a week. So we're looking at, okay, if I gave you 10, how much money did you bring me back? Let's say, to make the math easy, let's say you brought me back $30,000. You made 3 sales at 10 each. You brought me 30,000. Now we track a number called NSLI. We track close rate. We do all of these things. And then what happens? Salesperson comes in at a 15% close rate and a $1,200 NSLI. Are we going to keep giving him leads?
Mm-mm.
No. So we do it with sales, with marketing. What do we look at? We look for uh, cost per lead. We look at cost per issued lead. We look at cost per customer acquisition. Look at all kinds of different variables. Okay, what percentage of of my revenue did this cost me? On and on and on. Well, why don't we do that with our P&L? Why don't we have the same sort of system set up with our P&L? You want to hear something? This is not going to shock you, but it may shock a lot of people listening. So we do every year, for the last 4 years, we've done this profit workshop. Hundreds of contractor companies have come through this thing. And we survey everybody before the workshop. And we ask them, how many of you, three answers. Um, how many of you get a P&L by the 15th of each month? 1/3 don't get a P&L by the 15th of the month. Another third sometimes get a P&L. And then the last bucket is 1/3 actually get a P&L. All right. So 2/3 of people in business that say they want to make a lot of money, that they want free time, don't get a P&L. P&L is the ultimate scorecard. The P&L tells you exactly what's going on in your business because you're there to make a profit. Make no mistake. You are there to maximize value to your shareholders, to your stakeholders. And in most cases, who's that? That's your spouse or partner and your children. Okay. And so you are not doing a good job if you are not looking at these financials. Because at the end of the day, what needs to happen is, okay, we did this revenue. And when we go all the way to the bottom, this much was left over. I think 10% break even, 15 to 20% is ideal. So if you do 2 million in revenue, your profit should be somewhere between 300 and 400,000. This is after everything and everyone is paid, including you, for the job that you do in the business. So if you're the GM of the business, what would it cost you to replace that position? What does that cost in your market? Say it's 100 grand. Okay. Well, you should be paying yourself a salary of 100 grand. And then that 100 grand should be on your P&L as an expense, not, at the bottom. And you say, well, yeah, my salary is included in the profit. And you think you're making more money than you are. So we have to understand what those numbers are telling us. And we got to make sure that the P&L, let's say, is structured in a way where you get that information quickly and easily for you to read it. And so we can go over some of what that might look like if you want.
I'd love to, yeah. And I know the listeners are probably listening like, yeah, I've heard this before. I've
Yeah.
heard, they always talk about it's this big, long document with lots of numbers on it. I understand expenses and income. Like, I get that part. But is there anything that we could be looking at in that document, the profit and loss, that is like if you take this and divide it by that, it gives you this, or something that is like a blinking light, either good or bad, that could help us as we're going along, like a
Well,
percentage or something?
yeah. So let's look at the way that we teach it and the way that we do it I didn't want to do this. Neither did my partner. But we actually, because we got so frustrated with the lack of bookkeepers and accountants in our field that understand our business, that understand accrual accounting, that understand how to use the balance sheet and the P&L, that don't do checkbook accounting, that don't do cash accounting. And I know all of this sounds complicated. It's not. Believe me, it's not complicated. So my partner and I, we started, essentially, we took his system that he's used for 4 decades to have above average profits in his business year after year after year, regardless of what was happening with the economy, regardless of what was happening in the marketplace. None of that mattered. This was his profit number, and he was going to hit that number year after year after year. We take that system and we install it in other companies now. So the way that we look at it is we say, okay, you have 7 buckets where everything lives. Okay. Bucket one, materials, labor, commissions. Okay. It's 3 buckets, but those are your first 3. After that, you take those numbers, you take that away from your revenue, what you installed and collected, not what's sitting in the bank, not your customer deposits, what was actually completed. Okay. Then you get a gross margin number. Most important number is that number, gross margin.
Mm.
The next bucket is marketing. And then you have 3 overhead buckets that we track. Okay. Simple. 7 buckets. And then we use QuickBooks Online. Very simple to run a P&L. All you do is you go in and you say, okay, give me October or give me November, and then give me percentage of income next to it. So now I can look at each of the buckets, and I know I like your red light, green light. Is it red light or is it green light? We call it on track or off track using EOS language. Is your gross margin what it needs to be? Now, we define that early. So when we first start with a client, and by the way, you can kind of do this on your own, you have 100%. If you want to make 15% net profit, you can only spend 85%.
Pretty simple.
How does it break up within the 7 buckets?
Yeah.
How do you break that up? So we do that first. So we talk through and we say, okay, where are you right now? We're at 6%. We want to be at 15%. All right. Well, we got to get 9 points from somewhere. Where are we going to go get it from? And we create a model. Now, it doesn't mean we can do it immediately. Sometimes it takes a year, or sometimes it'll take 2 years. But at least now we've got a model that we run. So we create what we call a profit blueprint. Here is what your ideal looks like. Okay. 15% net, or 18 or 20 or whatever the number is. Here's what it looks like. What does your gross margin need to be in order for you to hit that number? Now, gross margin, okay, is what we use to pay for marketing and overhead. It's everything that's not a direct cost against the job.
Mhm.
And so once we understand that, now we can then plan out what this all what our year is kind of going to look like. So if we want to, let's say we want to make $500,000 on a 15% net, that's you got to do 3.3 million in revenue. Okay. So in order for us to do 3.3 million in revenue, we take your average job, whatever let's say in your case, it's 100 grand.
Sure.
So now we need to do 33, 34 jobs. Okay. Done, completed jobs, all revenue in. And so now we go through and we say, okay, what was our material labor? What's our allowable material labor and commissions on that? And that's going to give us our gross margin. Gross margin is also dictates your pricing strategy. So a lot of people are pricing. I was telling you about the client that I have that's in the outdoor living business in Southern California. She, before she got a hold of me and got into our groups, she's like pulling her hair out because she's doing these big, amazing, beautiful jobs. And yet she's in debt and doesn't have any money.
Huh.
So I'm like, okay, we got to break down these jobs and understand what is going on with each job.
Yeah.
And so we did that. And so she showed me this job. She said, Brian, I just sold this $750,000 job. This is like a week or two before she got into our groups. And I said, okay, let's go through that job. Okay, how long is that job going to take you? I forgot what she said. 6 months, let's say. Okay, how many working days is that? 120. All right. It's 750,000. Divide that by 120 working days. That's X number of dollars per day. What's your gross margin? What's your gross margin? Well, I think it was like 20%. Okay. So your profit per day in that situation is $1,200. That $1,200 needs to cover all of your overheads and needs to provide you a salary and profit. Once I showed her that, she's like, oh shit, no wonder we're not making any money. You
Yep.
think?
Yep.
So you're bringing in 20 grand a month on this one job. You're bringing 20 grand a month up after your in gross margin, let's say, after material and labor and commissions. You're bringing in 20 grand a month, and yet your monthly overhead is 35,000 a month or 45,000 a month. Now what are you going to do? Well, now you got to either go hustle and go sell more jobs, or you're going to find yourself in a situation where you're running out of cash. Now you got to go into debt. So what did she do? She went into debt. She said, "Hey, I got this job. It's going to bring in X number of dollars per week. And oh, by the way, you know what people will loan you money on? I forgot what it's called, but they will swipe X number of dollars out of your account every single week to pay the debt." I forgot what it's called. They told me what it's called, but it's
Huh.
like, so I took a loan for $200,000 because I'm not making enough money to cover my monthly net, but I'm okay because the weekly payment's $5,000 or
Huh.
$3,000, whatever it is. I'm like, people are doing this shit because
Uh,
they're not charging enough and they're not walking away from jobs that they shouldn't do in the first place. Like, okay, it sounds great to sell a $750,000. Sounds amazing. And by the way, the end product is going to be amazing. She didn't make any money. So why
yeah.
the hell do it? Why go through the exercise of doing it? So last time we talked about the guy that's doing 20 million with a 5% net, making $1 million a year. Well, my thinking on that, let's just say, I'm trying to be nice here. My thinking on that was I would have wanted to go deeper with the guy. Now, we weren't talking about necessarily, we were talking about a bunch of things. And I didn't want to go into a traffic conversation with them because it was going to take way too long and I wasn't going to change his mind. But had he been interested, I would have started to ask him questions like, okay, well, let's take a look at your P&L. Let's reorganize it in a way where I can understand it and it's accurate. Because most P&Ls aren't even accurate. So the 2/3 of people that are getting their P&Ls, or that, I'm sorry, the 1/3 of people that are getting their P&Ls, I'll bet you 50 to 80% of those aren't even accurate. Okay. They're not even accurate. So now with this guy, I would say, okay, you know, if we set up our profit model to just be, let's say 12%, forget 15, let's say 12%. You would only need to sell $10 million in order to make the same amount of money that you're making now on 20 million. Wouldn't the business be easier to run if you were only selling half the jobs that you're selling now? Wouldn't you have less risk, less liability, and oh, by the way, you would make more money? Or, you know, let's look at what do we have to do with your current business. Let's say you don't want to give up that product that's pulling your profit down. What if we say, okay, well, let's look at why we're only at 5% and let's add 7 points to the bottom line. Well, where are we going to get it from? Marketing is, he's spending what he's spending on marketing. The only place we can get it from is by raising our price,
Huh.
is raising our price. We need a higher gross margin so that we can put more money to the bottom line. Now,
Right.
will you sell less jobs? We don't know. We don't know until we make the change.
Mhm.
And in most cases, by the way, the price increase does not affect close rate unless it's ridiculous.
Right.
Okay. Now, in your case, when you're selling big jobs, the differences can be huge.
They can be.
20,000, 50,000. Well, that guy said he would do it for 150,000 when you came at 192,000.
Yep.
That's tough.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
But it's understanding how all of these things work together. And a lot of times it's a pricing issue. And yet people are looking at this and they're afraid to raise price. They're afraid to put their prices where they need to be in order for them to make the right amount of profit. And so I know I've gone around and around and around with, and I've thrown a lot of stuff out. Um, what can we talk about specifically?
Well, I mean,
Sorry, I
as
just realized that I probably said 12 different thoughts in that
yeah, yeah,
whole,
yeah.
in that
No,
whole
no,
thing.
you were dropping some gold there, and it's really a matter of the reallocation of how your profit and loss looks, so you can see that gross margin and know that that's the money that's left to spend on overhead and everything else going on in the business, and then you need to have a profit after that. It's understanding those basics. When it comes down to it, what I'd love to know is profit and loss statement, right? When we look at a profit and loss, I've been looking at them for years. That's great. It shows you one story. Now, why is my bank account different than my profit and loss statement? Like I might have like a lot of money in my profit and loss, and then the bank account has very little in it. And I'm wondering like, what's the disparity there? Why are they different? Can I spend my profit and loss number, or is it? Can I? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, there's an inaccurate financial, number
Hmm.
one, because if it tells you you made 20,000 this month and yet you don't know where the money is, that's a problem. Um, it's use of the balance sheet also.
Mhm.
So all of these trade contractors should be on accrual accounting. And
Right.
all accrual accounting is that the revenue and the costs, the direct costs to that job are all put into the same month on a P&L. So while that job is going on, all the money that comes in is on the balance sheet. All the money that's paid out lives on the balance sheet. And then it's moved over to the P&L when the job is completed. That's all that accrual accounting is. And accrual accounting gives you the most accurate picture of how your business is doing. For example, this month you got 3 progress payments of $100,000. You got a new customer deposit of $25,000. So now you look at your P&L, it says $125,000, right? If you do cash accounting, it says $125,000. Well, let's say you bought a few materials for this job and some labor on this job, and for the deposit money, you didn't really have very much expense because you haven't started really doing anything yet. So now your P&L looks amazing. Your gross margin's like 90%. Your bottom line says, that you made $40,000 this month. No, you didn't. None of that money, all of that money should live in your balance sheet as liabilities because you haven't completed any jobs. Now, if you completed a job this month and that job was a $125,000 job and it was all of the customer payments came in, they're on the balance sheet. Now we move them over to the P&L. Now we take all of our material costs and labor costs and commissions that were directly associated with that job, and we move those over to the P&L. Now we get an accurate picture of what our gross margin is. So let's say it's 50%. Material, labor, commissions all added up to 50%. Now it's accurate. Now I know because we closed that job. We're done. We finished it. And if that number, so this is where also job costing comes in, where we create a P&L for every single job, regardless of size. Every P&L gets its own little mini or every job gets its little mini P&L. So now we can look at it and say, okay, we hit our target, red light, green light. We hit our target of 50% gross margin. Well, what if we didn't? What if our gross margin came in at 34% instead of our number, which is supposed to be 50%? Well, guess what? Something went wrong on the job. You had more expenses than you thought, or you didn't price it right. So now you could either keep going, with that, or, which is what a lot of people do because they don't understand how it works, or you can get to the bottom of it and say, wait a minute, our gross margin plan is 50%. We can't sell another job that comes in under 50%. And if we do, I'm not taking it. It's tough. It's hard to turn work away. But that's how important it is to understand your numbers because your numbers will tell you what you need to do next.
Yep.
Just like with your sales example. Okay. So if my close rate should be 40%, but I'm coming in at 25%. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to pull the salesperson on your side and you're going to say, hey, what happened? What's going on here? I've been giving you leads, but you're only at 25%. We're supposed to be at 40. That's our benchmark. I can't give you any more leads. You got to go back and get retrained. You got to the sales manager needs to ride along with you until you can get back up to 40. And if you can't get to 40, I'm sorry, but you can't work here. And we'll do that with a salesperson. We'll do that with a marketing source that's not coming in where we need it to come in. It's not performing, but we don't do it with our P&L.
Yeah.
It's the most important document that you get. It is what tells you how you're doing as a business and as a leader of that business. That is your scorecard.
Dude, preach on. But, I think for me, it was in the beginning was the raw reality of that document would piss me off or make me happy. It's like one or the other. It's like never in between. So, I used to run all cash accounting. My old accountants used to have everything as cash. So I had a really good month and sold a bunch of projects. It was massive. I love to look at those months. Then there's the next month was nothing. And I'm like, oh crap, we're in a negative until I obviously traded up to a much better CPA. It was like, no, this is all going to be accrual because you can't take all this as our projects could last a year. There's like massive, so you can't take it all up front. And it's like, wow, look at that. May was amazing. We made like $1 million in May. That's amazing. And then it's like, yeah, but we don't realize that cash until the next May. You know what I mean? You can't have that. It doesn't make sense. And then every year it's always this bumpy, wavy line.
Well, and that's why it's like this. That's why it's like this all the time. It's like, oh, we have a great month. No, we had a shitty month. Oh my God, we had a great quarter. We had a bad quarter. And to make matters worse, a lot of people don't look at their P&L until the end of the year when they take all their crap to the accountant. Well, the accountant doesn't understand your business. Yeah, they're accountants. They're great. They're great at what they do. They don't understand your business. What's worse is bookkeepers don't even understand a P&L. They're data entry people. I mean, look, nothing against bookkeepers. You have an important job in a business. But, I mean, they're not accountants. They don't even understand what a P&L really is. They don't understand what a balance sheet really is. All they know is, well, I have to put this transaction here. And I put this transaction here.
Yep.
Without any understanding of what it all means together. It's shocking. Like our average company that we deal with is 6, 7, $8 million.
Oh,
And they've got this bookkeeper that they've had for years. It's Martha. She's great. She's been with me forever. We're not making any money. Well, does Martha know why you're not making any money? Well, no, we don't, and it's just like, blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, because you're putting a burden on somebody that that's not their job description. Their job description not to completely understand a P&L. Their job is not to help you design your P&L so you actually make money. No, their job is to take invoices and checks and
mhm.
put them into QuickBooks. That's
Yep.
their job.
Yep. Beans in the buckets. That's what
Yeah.
they do.
Your job is to understand how the hell the whole thing works. That's your job, you know?
Yep. It's back to the accountability again, right? You
It's
can't.
back to
Yep.
accountability. It's back to
Yep.
taking responsibility. It's back to you want to become a successful business owner. You want to become wealthy from your business. You want to create freedom for your life from your business. These are the things you need to do. You need to become a better business owner. And becoming a better business owner is not you putting out fires. It's not you running from one tragedy to another. It's you sitting down and thinking, like what we talked about last time. Take
Mhm.
half a day a week and just go think. Learn, understand what your P&L is telling you. Go ask for advice. Call people, go to a class. Learn,
Yep. That
become better.
You have to, because a lot
Yeah.
of people get into business in our world and in the service world, the home service world. They get into the business because they didn't want to work for somebody else. So they might be great technicians. They might be incredible at delivering the final result. But this whole business thing just kind of pisses them off, right? Because it's one extra burden they got to manage. Selling's already hard enough. Getting the client to follow through is hard enough. And now they got to run a business on top of all of this. Like,
Yeah.
it's a lot.
Yeah.
Most people don't go into these businesses because they want to be a business person. They go in because they are really good at doing the thing. And now they've got this burden of business to manage.
Well, and that's why the key is getting rid of every job you do in the business.
Mm, mhm. Amen, brother.
So you're your number one salesperson. Guess what? You better stop selling and go figure out a way where you can hire people to go and sell as good or better than you.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Now, well, that's a whole tangent we can go down. Um, your job is once you develop your selling system, now you got to get good at marketing. You have to become a marketer. You build a marketing system. Here's how we do it here. Now you can bring somebody in and say, okay, here's how we do it. Here's all the metrics that we track. Here's our results. I want you to manage this. And now I want you to make this better. Then you got to bring in production. I need somebody that's going to take over production for me. So I'm not getting involved in the day-to-day of production and on and on. And pretty soon you come to the point where you have nothing to do. That's when you know you got it. Okay. Now, when I say you've got nothing to do, you're still leader of this company. You have to set the tone of where this company is going. You have to coach your leadership team. That's your job. Okay. And this is the thing that people forget. It's like the role here is to hire people to get you to not have to work.
Mhm.
And how do you do that? You need money. You need
Yes.
fuel. Where do you get the fuel from? You get it from cash. Where does cash come from? It comes from profit. It comes from money that's left over after a job is done and completed. It's all tied together.
Yep.
So don't you
100%.
think you should get really good at understanding how profit works? And again, we have 7 buckets. 7. We organize, okay? So we sit down with you and we organize your 7 buckets. Very simple, okay? We come up with this is what your gross margin needs to be in order for you to hit this profit number. Because let's just say you have marketing costs. A lot of people in your space, people don't spend a big chunk of their revenue on marketing. Okay. One of my clients and a great friend runs the largest window replacement company in Florida. You know what his marketing budget's going to be next
What
year?
what's that?
22 or 23% of revenue. Okay. By the way, he can do this because he understands his P&L. He will still put way above average profits to the bottom line with a 23% marketing cost because he understands the levers. He understands that in order for me to get enough gross margin, in order for me to cover my marketing and my overheads and still make this profit, here's what my gross margin number needs to be. And I'm not going to tell you, because everybody's is a little bit different. So we don't have necessarily a magic number, but depending on product, we can look at it and say, okay, like for example, something that's the exact opposite of you guys. Say something like gutter covers. Okay, I have a lot of clients that do gutter covers. Well, if you do this by itself, it's a really hard business. If you do it as an add-on, it could be very, very profitable. But if you're doing a $3,000 job, what does it cost you to make a lead? Does it cost you $100, $50, $300? So if it costs you $300 to make a lead and you need 3 leads in order to make a sale, it just cost you $900 to buy a customer. If your average job is $3,000, now you've got 30% cost of marketing. Okay. Now some people will look at it and say, that's crazy. Well, is it? The gross margin on that particular product happens to be about 80%. 80%. So if I'm getting my gross margin of 80% and I'm spending 30% of that, okay, on marketing, I've got 50% left over for overhead and profit. I'm rolling in the dough. But you got to understand all of that in order to make the case. In your business, margins are generally what? 20, 30% gross margins? Yeah. Can be higher, lower. Depends on the company, right? So 20, 30%. Okay. Tough. You don't have a lot of money left for profit, overhead, and marketing. This is why a lot of companies in your space suffer with marketing because they're only spending 1% or 2%. And so then they this goes back to this all ties together, by the way. All 3 of these conversations you and I have had, it's shocking. And you knew this going into it, but they're all tied together. There's all commonalities within all of these, and so they all weave into each other.
I love it. It's so true, dude. And you're exactly right. And it's if you take revenue off the table and you look at gross margin as your indicator, because revenue
Yep.
doesn't mean shit.
Doesn't
Really,
mean
at the end of the
anything.
day. Nope.
Yep.
Everyone's like, I gotta hit 1 million. I want to hit 10 million. That's great. What's your gross margin? That's because that levels the field for every business. That is the indicator that no matter whether you're selling windows or outdoor living or cars, it levels every business because some have really, really high. And like we sell 6-figure projects. So, millions is great. It looks great. Everybody's happy. But the reality is, what is that gross margin? Because
Yeah.
even if the guy that's power washing for a living that has, $300,000 worth of revenue, but his gross margin could be better. And you'd be like, whoa, okay, well, maybe not by strength of volume, but by sheer input of how much, pressure or focus you need to have to run that company. Like there's so many different variables in that, but it is such a powerful number, listeners, to know. And if you don't know your gross margin, I say you sit down with your CPA and see if they know what that means. And if not, to reach out to somebody like Brian. Right. So Brian, if people are listening for the last 3 episodes, you're like, this guy, I'm curious what else he does, that kind of thing. How can they find you?
I think maybe the best on-ramp is just go to my website, thewealthycontractor.com. And on that first page, you'll see, I think the best thing to do is go and get a copy of this book, The 7 Secrets to Becoming a Wealthy Contractor. Sorry, I'm trying to find the camera position, but I'll buy the book for you. You just pay shipping and handling. And we'll send you a physical copy of the book. Plus there's a bunch of resources that you'll have available to you, that you'll unlock once you get the book. And that's a good start. The book is not going to tell you how to market and how to sell. To learn how to sell, you go to Joshua. To learn how to market, there's lots of resources out there for learning how to market. What this book is going to help you with is the underlying kind of mindsets of what does it take to be successful in this business. And once you've got that foundation and once you understand that, now we can start to talk about profitability. We could start to talk about sales. We can start to talk about marketing. We can talk about leadership. We can talk about all of the things required in order for you to build a great business. So that's probably the best way. The other thing that we're doing right now related to profit is a company called The Profit Masters. So if you just go to theprofitmasters.com, you'll check that out. But probably the best on-ramp again is the book, The 7 Secrets book.
I love it, Brian. And thank you for coming on here for the last, 3 weeks and really nailing down a lot of this, conversation around mindset and profit and all these things. Cause some people are scared of, they have a fear of failure, but I think more people have a fear of success because they don't know because their family never had it. They never had that kind of money. They're more afraid of it than they just push away.
Yeah.
And it's really, once you realize that all of those choices or all those things are choices and that you have the ability to learn past them. And
Yeah.
just by opening up and reading a book like Brian has, I met Brian, 4 years ago at one of your conferences. I came to Fort Lauderdale, came down and saw, and you had just great stuff and great people doing amazing stuff. And you led me on to a lot of great things that have really changed the way I do business. So I
Oh,
appreciate that,
that's
brother. I really
awesome.
do.
Well,
It's been a lot.
I hope you'll come back in February. We're going to be at Amelia Island. We're doing a huge event, and hopefully you and maybe some of your listeners want to hang out with us
Cool.
and check
You want to plug that event? You want to let
that
us know where they can find out more about that?
out. Yeah, go to accelerateevent.com. This is our 9th year, Accelerate Live, and we'll be at Amelia Island, and we talk about real world stuff. This is not about a rah-rah session. This is not about motivation. This is about helping you become the person that, you know, makes what you want to make and takes time off and lives life the way you want to live it. I'm not going to tell you how to live life. I'm not going to tell you how much money you should make. That's up to you to decide. What I can help you with is becoming the person that achieves all of those things. And so we talk about a lot of stuff. We talk about sales, we talk about pricing, we talk about profit, marketing, pricing, by the way, and I would say this to everybody that's listening. So we talked about, and I think this is an important caveat, Joshua. I know we got to wrap, but understanding price strategy is a critically important thing. And price strategy really comes down to selling value, not price. And a lot of people, and you deal with this a lot. And I'm saying this because of your listener, and I want your listeners to get this. Price is so much more in your head than it is real. You make it something that it's not. When you understand how to do value added selling, which is what Joshua will teach you how to do, price becomes secondary to building value because your system is going to teach them how to deliver value in the house. Because you could go out there and lowball everybody else and be busy, but you're never going to make any money. The companies that know how to make money and understand price strategy and are premium price providers understand value added selling, which is what you're going to teach them how to do. And so if you are stuck on this idea of price, you need to do 2 things. One is you need to fix that thinking in your head because it's broken thinking. It is broken thinking. It's never going to get you where you want to go. You need to be expensive, and it's perfectly fine. Number 1 is you. Number 2, go get the tools and systems. This guy will teach you how to do it the right way so that you could charge the right price. So now you got some money left over to actually start thinking about profitability and growth and success and wealth and freedom and all of that stuff.
Well, Brian, I appreciate that. I appreciate the plug. But you're exactly
No,
right.
but
Because
it's not
if you don't
just a
have the
plug.
cash, you can't do it.
Exactly. It's not just
Yeah.
a plug. It's
Mhm.
like, this is what it takes.
Yep.
This is what it takes. And if you don't like Joshua for whatever reason, find somebody else that does what he does. But go to him because he's in the same flipping business that you are and he's figured it out. And this is the thing about people is like, why are you going to try and figure it all out yourself? Somebody's already figured it out. In fact, a bunch of people have already figured it out. Go to them and learn from them. Shortcut the process. That's what Accelerate's all about. It's all about
Mhm.
shortcuts. People give shortcuts a bad rap. No, shortcuts are a good thing.
Yep.
Shortcuts
Exactly.
are a good thing.
Yep. If you can surround yourself with people that have already done what you want to do and you can compress decades into days,
Oh,
a
yeah.
weekend, I'm like, why wouldn't you do that
Yeah.
everywhere? Because then you can get to that success faster. And that's the ultimate goal.
Yeah, because they're too busy running around, putting out fires, thinking that they're getting ahead
Yeah.
with the illusion of accomplishment.
Yeah. Exactly.
No,
Nope.
stop.
Exactly. Well, Brian, I can keep going for days with you, but I appreciate you coming on. Thank you for all
Thanks
your
for
wisdom
having
that
me. I
you've,
appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely, brother. So, listeners, hopefully you got some value from Brian. I know I sure did. Go take a look at his book. Accelerate event that he has is amazing. I highly suggest it and recommend it. And yeah, man, he is what it sounds like. I can vouch for that. So, Brian, thank you for coming on, and listeners, thanks for tuning in.